Switching gears a bit. Got bigger droplets of rain.
Bigger droplets.
We're okay so far, maybe.
It almost felt like it was slowing down there for a second.
It kind of did. And
Yeah.
now it's picking back up a little harder.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I feel like we'll know when we know. I feel like...
Yeah. That's a quote right there. We'll know when we know. Switching gears a bit, you are teaching a class on the Civil War this summer.
Yes. It was super last minute. I didn't know I was going to be able to do it. The department, a lot of students, specifically with history, just, I don't know why it ends up to be a thing so often, but a lot of students try and get those like liberal arts side of more of the social science side of their degrees done if they can. Rock out a class in the summer if it's not their major field.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you never know if the class is going to be able to run if there's not enough students in it. So
Okay.
we like just hit over the threshold of what we needed, and the class is running. So the students are excited. It's all like asynchronous, so it's a lot of recording lectures, having the students participate on like a discussion board, and then meeting with students and like holding like writing seminars, air quotes for seminars. Just little moments to kind of get them to like think about writing and how to approach their papers. But it's an 8-week course. It's front-loaded with a lot of reading and a lot of writing, but at the end of the day, it's manageable for a lot of students, so they want to take advantage of that if they can. The one hurdle you have to get over is, are you going to have enough students for the school to have the class run? Which it's normally right around like 60 is where they like to keep it. They are flexible. If you're at 50, it'll go. But it's super exciting. It's all asynchronous, so a lot of the lectures are like pre-recorded so students can watch them on their own time. But then I hold like little moments for writing seminars with the students for their papers to kind of talk through like research ideas, and then they get to discuss with their peers and with me on like a discussion board online. I think it's an important class in general, and especially right now, just like in the wake of the years that we have been living in. I think being able to look back at the Civil War and see how like a country divided can correlate both to like that period in time, but both also like what we can take out of that for our own lives today is super interesting and I think important for a lot of students. So it's early in the process. It's only an 8-week class, so it's like very heavy on the reading and writing. But so far, the students seem to be pretty excited about it and pretty interested in the topic. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. Feels like the topic of Civil War is coming up more recently, or like interest in the Civil War, right? Because we're experiencing some things in the country or life right now, and it's like, okay, let's go back. How were things handled back then when a country was going through a type of division, and what can we learn from that? And it's like it was only 160 years ago.
Yeah.
Historically, as you know, as a historian, like that's not a long period of time.
Not a long time at all. That's part of the wildest thing, really, to like talk to students about, especially when it comes to the Civil War. And I think it's a lot of like the century that it happened in. So they see like 18, like in the start 1862, 1863, 1864, and they like think, oh, that's so far, like that's so long ago. But then you like put it in context and you say like, okay, my dad was born in 1960. His parents were alive when the government was doing a lot of their WPA recordings, some of which interviewed like the last remaining slaves, people who were once enslaved. So it's really only like 2 generations removed from something that seems like so far away. And when students really see and hear some of those recordings or read some of those like stories, I think it's humbling for them to be like, oh, it's not as far away as I originally thought. I think it like, hits home for them on them.
And it's like it's like, I think when you're young, you look at these main things like there's no slavery, there's civil rights, and you learn about MLK Jr. and like the movements then, and you're like, oh, yeah, like everything's all good.
Yeah.
But then you're like, oh, wait a minute. That was like only 120 years ago. This is still a healing process that we're in.
Right. Where there's still so much hate and violence, and like growing up when you are a second grader and they teach you about the civil rights movement, it's easy to think like, oh, we won and things are good now. And then as you grow up and you like experience life a little bit more, you see a lot of like these disparities that are still present in society, and you see the way that slavery has transformed into just like a different name really in America. And I think that for students who are very used to and comfortable with that idea of like, oh, like progress has been made, when they have a college level course and they can see that some of these problems both still exist and it is, like you said, still a healing process, it becomes a little bit more real for them. And then just the last couple of years, I mean, we've seen so much with Black Lives Matter and the rise in like social activism and political activism. And I think students are really seeing like, no, this isn't just like a hard stop bookend. Everything's good. We can wash our hands of it. Progress only works if we all commit to the idea of progress and we all live the idea of progress. So I love being able to teach a course like this because I think it really does much more than teaching Western Civ, where it's more of a survey and it's more of the students just reading about kings and monarchs. Being able to really see like what happened in our country and how relevant it still is to their lives today, I think it makes them a little bit more interested and they participate a little bit more. So
yeah. Something like that comes on my mind, like I'll see on social media and like, you know, I hear people talk like, you know, the stuff isn't taught in history class. Why didn't we learn this stuff in history class and high school stuff? And I'm thinking like, usually in school, you have to learn about all these subjects.
Right.
You only have so much time, so you got to hit the main points.
Right.
And even my own experience, like I didn't get this other expanded version of American history until I took AP US history.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, interesting. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of, you know, a lot going on.
Yeah,
and it's like now in this class, I'm sure they get more of that kind of perspective too.
As you grow up, you always just get like a little bit more in the classes. I do think that curriculum isn't perfect and that it can be improved, and that there are stories and ways to tell history and to teach literature to students and writing to students and history to students. That's a little bit more interactive and challenges maybe some of the norms that we've experienced within like K through 12 curriculums. That's again, it's something that we can, as like a collective, work on and try and always improve. And I think that we do see some improvement on that. I know when I was working in Charleston, one of the big things that, one of like the final projects that I was working on was creating a new curriculum, a new history curriculum for the K through 12 schools to be proposed at like educational board meetings, where it was the South, right? So promoting a little bit more of a true history or a real history rather than a lot of like the whitewashed Southern history that these students were accustomed to for their entire lives. So there still is progress that needs to be made, but I think that you're right. As you grow up, you just are presented to a little bit more, and you're able to really kind of put those blocks on top of each other and build. So.
Yeah.